Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve. I am the Sales and Marketing Manager for Computer Letter, and we're really honoured and proud today to be able to host this event on behalf of the NZSDA and with the NZSDA. So on my left, right, however you can see it, I've got Andy Lowe, who is the President of the NZSDA. Say hi. Say hi, Andy.
Hey guys. Welcome.
And our special guest down the bottom, we have John. So John was originally meant to be speaking at our NZSDA conference and the awards and whatnot. Unfortunately, with everything that's going on, as we're all well aware, that's not going to happen and is well gone. So Melissa and the NZSDA team have basically put this together. And this is a member requested seminar. So we have 3 of them. And so this was put on the Facebook page, the internal page, and that was requested as one around people, opportunities, and value. So we're going to have 3 of these, which is really exciting. Today is all around people. And what I think, John, is if you can give everyone a bit of an idea of what they'd expect today, and then maybe for the few that are coming up, so we're all on the same page. And just a little bit of housekeeping. So we're all probably well versed in how these things work, but this is completely interactive, okay? So we really want people, if you've got any questions, or if you want something explained a bit further, you can use that button at the bottom, Q&A, type in there, and I'll make sure every question is getting answered. Or if you feel like getting unmuted and want to have your say, and we'll see your lovely face, let me know, and what we'll do is we'll unmute you and you can ask John a direct question. With everything that's going on right now in New Zealand, there's definitely going to be some things out of today that are quite relatable, which is really cool. So, and make sure that you've hit that speaker view as well in your Zoom. So the presentation is going to be forefront in your screen, and just then the speaker's view in the top right. So I think that's enough from me, mate. So I'll let you just take people through what they should expect today in today's session, and then we'll get into it. Great.
Okay. I'll just quickly jump in as well. I'm Cohen, I'm just in the background. If anyone doesn't know how to activate speaker view, you just press Alt F1.
That's
and then you can go on, John.
Okay. The voice that controls it all. Yeah.
The Darth Vader in the background. Hi everyone, my name is John Hadfield. I'm a life member of your sister organisation, the Australian Sign and Graphics Association. I've been proud to be in New Zealand many times, over 35, 36 times. I've attended and I'm guessing those people in the background remember discussions we've had at various national conferences, etc. Melissa's idea to take what we're going to do in a 1-hour presentation and sort of split it up into a few chunks, and wisely chose to let the members decide on what they wanted to hear first and foremost. Today's one, as Steve said, is about people. And I'll start that by saying we've all got to remember that we're people too. The people who run the business, we get referred to as the boss and a number of other comments, but it's a fairly fast-paced session. I've got a lot of paperwork in the sense that it comes from an 1,800-word article. So I've put it into a format that you'll see in the slide presentation that you are welcome to have a copy. In fact, I think Conan's going to put it as a download PDF at the end of it, so you don't have to make copious quantities of notes. That'll be the same for the next one, which is called Embracing Technology, where I basically talk about the opportunities across a number of different fields, like not just obvious technologies like 3D printing, but the technologies that we can create ourselves, which could be better operating systems for ourselves and better processes. And the last one was building value. That's actually one of my favorites. And it's not just about building value. Sure, you've got to build value in the business, but it's more about the concept of treating the business as its own legal entity, which I believe it is in New Zealand, the same as it is in Australia, and respecting it for that value, and making sure that the value is there when you sell the business. I sold my company after 30 years for a value in excess of 7 figures. And that was a lifetime's work. 30 years is often considered a lifetime. And I was fortunate in the sense we had some other patents that I sold separately and had a different journey with that part of my life, the last 20 odd years in working overseas and consulting. So I've got a fairly interesting tapestry, and I hope to share some of the things that I've learned in this presentation. So let's get on with it. Okay, the slide that I've got up for people first and foremost. Let's have a look at the next slide, and we can work through them. To make a true comparison, and obviously value and putting a real value in things is from a point of view, well, if we can establish another area first. So what I want to do is say, well, the tangible assets that we've got, like business and plant and your building and all of those things, are obvious. And we can make tangible decisions, like how long is the payback on your digital equipment? Like typically look at throwing it out after 4 years, looking at the maintenance costs. What's the lifespan? The commercial premises, sure, you know, and it was one of the decisions we made, was buying our own premises. They're all great things to look at. But if we continue on with the next slide, it's obvious the building's going to generally grow in value. If we go into the look at customers, no question at all, they've got a value. They really are your business when it comes to it at the end. I often talk about a triangle, and the triangle should be you, the suppliers, and the customer, and they should all be interrelatable. So other points of value of infrastructure and processes about how they add value to your business. Software, trucks, all great fun stuff, the boy shed, so to speak. But looking at the next slide, what about people? And you, as I mentioned before, the boss, often don't consider those, because as we were chatting before the seminar, we often get to a stage where as people, we don't really consider the obvious, because it's a slow and creeping change that comes upon us, a bit like Michael Gerber's reference in the book, The E-Myth, where a lady starts baking pies. She's really good at making pies, so she keeps making more of them. That's very similar to good people making signs. So a fantastic lady signwriter, to put the same comparison, as signwriting does some great work. People ask her for more signs, so she starts to make more signs. When she makes more good signs, of course, the next thing happens is that she's making more and more work for herself, and she's got to employ people. And then, as we were talking before with Andy, what typically happens is we forget that we have to move into the background, and we all of a sudden are doing a job we don't really like to do. We'd rather be out there making signs, but we've actually got to start running the business. And in many cases, we're not trained for it. So as I say, anybody with a borrowing capacity can lease a building, equipment, and all the bibs and bobs you want. But the real skill is your understanding of how intelligent you can work with your people. If not, you've got nothing to bank on. Next slide. So clever companies, a great example. If you look at the clever companies like Google and Apple and Facebook, they know this new term, and I don't really like the term, but they call it people capital. But if we, and I'm not trying to suggest a person is a commodity for 1 second, but I am saying that there is massive value in the person, because without that person or people, you can't generate wealth if the machine's not running. So the old school way of thinking about things is cheap labour, pump goods out, and maybe there's a whole new genre of people in our industry that do that, and that's their business model, and I can't dispute that. It's not where I come from. So New School, I believe we should be investing in people and empower your people to work with it, to run their own jobs, to design their own work, to encourage them to be creative, which is, as a bunch of creative professionals as we are, what we should be doing. So let's explore that a little further. Good versus bad employees. So the combination of this article, and there's 3 articles at the end of it in a slideshot that I refer to, and of course you're welcome to them. I've sent them to Melissa, and could send them to Steve so he can put them on the website. It's based around 3 main articles that I wrote. One of them is, it doesn't matter what they're called, we'll deal with that later on, but Warren Buffett, who was one of the richest people in the world from buying shares in companies, has a great quote, and it's money is what you pay, but value is what you get. And the message is really, really clear in my view. Interestingly enough, on that, I've just done a private survey on my own recognizance about the salaries we pay, or the wages we pay, and I'll share that with Melissa. It's something I did for a client because I had a bit of an argument with him about, I felt that he was underpaying a person in a particular role, which is a sort of admin, estimation, sales manager in-house. And I thought, there's no point engaging me to help you employ someone if you're going to underpay them. I just won't get involved in it. And it was about 15 grand a year. So that was a reasonable sort of money. And what came up was a percentage that based somewhere in between both of our facts. So it comes back to, we do see money as a value that people pay. But if you look at it statistically and read all the white papers about how we treat humans, each other and ourselves, money is not the only reward. A lot of it's come back to the real value in what you pay for people is what you get. But what they want in most cases is thank you, appreciation, respect, the intangibles that are worth far more value. Next slide, please. So rewarding and employing employees. Every company has to stay competitive and they have to constantly improve their operations and the employees. To keep finding good people and having the challenge of conducting interviews, one of the things I suggest is a key performance indicator. So as an additional bonus at the end of this document, I've developed over the years a key performance indicator document, which is a Word doc. You can personalize it, change the questions, but it's a document meant to get the employee talking and understand what they need out of the relationship. So we'll talk a little bit of that, about that at the end. Thank you. It's a good idea to do an appraisal, as I was saying. I like it to be at least yearly, and it gives you that open forum for both employers and employees to communicate, bring forth ideas and raise any opportunities and difficulties. So, and that it's covered in this particular, what I call a KPI document, key performance indicator document. So performance appraisal should be designed along the basis that what's expected of them and their interpretation, that I should add, and are they receiving timely feedback in relation to their performance. We had an example many years ago. We did a joint Australian and New Zealand conference in Fiji. For those in the audience who remember it, so it was an absolutely wonderful few days, and we had the one speaker for the entire time, and we modelled a whole lot of different practices people were doing. I think from memory it was 1995, and we'd put in place a performance rating amongst our staff, and we didn't ask any questions weekly. It was a form that people filled in. We eventually turned it into software that we ran in-house, where people used to rate everybody individually every day. So 1 point was they were performing poorly, 3, I hadn't seen them that week or they were average, 5 meant that they were outstanding. And interesting for us, we thought it would help us reward the higher performance. And it was a real turning point in my business career. Those high performing people will normally do that, except there's some outside force. It's the ones that you don't know. So a lot of people maybe think they're doing well, but you're not asking the right questions, or you're not giving them an opportunity to have them talk and you listen. Highlight opportunities for training and career development. And counter to that, a lot of people may not want that. They may be happy being in that role, and that's something that should be respected and acknowledged. And giving recognition in a fair manner. And that fair manner, could be as simple as a thank you, a small gift voucher at Bunnings, or whatever is relative to that area. Next slide. The first part of that process, and stepping away from how you do the interviews and make sure you're talking and having communication is very high value, is that the appraisal will only be successful if you've got your head in the right place, and talk about what motivates them, how do they see their future, what gems do they see that you don't, some of the little opportunities you can talk to them about, and 2, rather than ramming it down anyone's throat, have an opportunity to have this open field environment. The next slide. And the fact is, contented staff are more likely to stay, be more productive, make your work, your life work at your place much easier. the vast majority of people want to know how they're performing. They want to learn and grow. And don't be totally surprised that if their thoughts are completely different to yours. They're different people and should be respected and treated that way. But poor performance will grow like a virus. And the phenomenon that I often hear most common is I'm out at someone's site talking to them about probably something completely unrelated. It could be workflow or marketing or whatever. But they don't understand that if they don't ask the question, or they don't even interface with their clients. So there's an old process called management of walking around, where it's a really good habit to get into, to walk through the premises, whether you've only got 2 people or whether it's you and the dog. You should walk through and say, "Good morning, dog, how are you going today?" And I mean your dog. I don't mean to treat your employees like that. But I'm saying if you've got 2 or 3 people in the shop, walk through. If you're going to pop out for a couple of hours, say, "Hey guys, I'm going out to do X, Y, Z." It's that common decency, the good mornings and the good afternoons, that make the value in the company and expose the fact that you are open and prepared to listen to people. And the 6 Ps are a part of all of that. You know what the missing character is, so we'll go to the next slide. Preparation time. If you're going to have a meeting with someone, I'm suggesting block out some time, make it that's suitable for both. Find out what their day is going to be like, and the same, you should be pre-armed with that day, and block out an hour for each staff member, or maybe even if you keep doing it, maybe in your meeting room or the lunchroom or your meeting, your own boardroom. I'm not big on open doors, as you can probably see by my office in the background. Sorry, I'm not big on closed doors. I like to have people walk up to a door and just knock on it. The greatest unhappiness was normally that when there was a couple of knocks on the door. When somebody knocked on my door, I thought, okay, I've got a resignation that I'm going to have a look at here, because no one ever knocked at our place. They could feel free to walk in. The closed door behind me is because it's an unused office at the moment with COVID. In fact, there's no one in the office most of the time. Okay, next slide.
Sorry, John, just before we got a little bit too far ahead, I just had a question come through around the KPI section that we had in. So just could you help elaborate even a little bit more on when setting a KPI for a staff member? It's really hard to find that line between what should be just their job, for example, versus where you should be giving them this extra incentive to go above and beyond, because a lot can fall back into, well, actually that was probably just in the contract, for example, or whatever. Do you have anything that you could kind of suggest or help the team on that section, just when setting that KPI?
Yeah, there's a bit of a gap in my knowledge about who I'm addressing to. And one of the things I always do at a conference in the first place when you're talking face to face is I try and get to know my audience a little bit better, because there's a big difference between someone running a 1 to 3 person shop against someone running a 5 or 10 or larger. So a lot of traditional KPIs have been based on a monetary value. You do X amount of work, I make a profit, I pay you X, Y, Z. That is very difficult to monitor, because the next job you could lose a truckload, and it's the most common area. So the KPIs that I'm predominantly talking about are KPIs that are what are probably the intangibles. It's about that questionnaire or that survey that we used to do every week that we showcased at the Fiji Joint Australian New Zealand conference. It's based on how do people feel that they went. So it's more those emotives than the actual tangible hard currency type areas. So we're asking questions more like, typically with creative people, it's more about feel and tactile than the left-hand logical brain thinkers like accountants. And I hope I'm not putting accountants offside. If there were any there, hello accountants, I love you dearly. But I'm more about the people who make stuff generally have a tactile spirit about them. They see things, they can visualize. So the KPIs that I'm talking about are those intangibles that that they can talk about, because monetary things, you can draw up monetary things, but you've always got to have a balance sheet that scores, okay, we made $1,000 out of this, so you get X, Y percentage out of it. But you've also got to have the flip side of it that says, okay, we lost 10,000 out of this job and the job was only worth 5. And for those who've had that pain, that's a big hole to catch, especially when you look at, and I'll quote Aussie figures, the average turnover per person per company in Australia for different performing companies is a known number. And I'll share that at some other point because it's probably going to take me 10 minutes to explain it, but it's a really simple formula. And you can walk into shops, or I can walk into shops and see shops that are really highly performing and they're clean and tidy and everybody's got a smile on their face, and you can feel this natural buzz about the place. I'm talking about that level of KPI. We can monitor that. But that can also be destroyed, I mean, simply by employing 1 or 2 new people that have got a different background and different carryover that they bring in. So,
yeah, okay. So I think I get what you're saying. And so maybe it's not necessarily black and white, that it can be a bit grey, and potentially the owner could set some KPIs around per job, and it's around reviewing the job at the end and a bit more of a feeling involved in it. Like how did the person go, and the speed and the accuracy and right products used, along those kind of lines.
That's right, Steve. Yeah, because I think when you if you can do it on a per job basis, it has to be a sort of quid pro quo against the ones that you win and the ones that you lose. So it's sort of more like that old school thought that you'll make money if I make money. Whereas the suggestion that I'm putting forward with the KPIs, it's more about the intangible values of having a happy workplace, and if that's encouraging and fostering people, and people. A great one is the old sign wall, where you used to have a whole lot of gun sign writers belting away, and they would always be encouraging and pushing the other younger people that were there. So you created this environment that built people up. I'm sure there was always the slanging matches and the cheekiness about a place with that sort of spirit. But if you've got happy people that love to come to work, as Confucius says, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. I mean, that's me. You know, I work because I want to, not because I have to. I think that's the natural KPI that we should be striving for, rather than dollars and cents. You know, the accountants can work that out, but it has to have a double-sided ledger, a plus and a minus. Whereas KPIs that talk about real people respect the fact that they are individuals.
Right. Great, thank you for that.
Okay. It's a complex answer to what could be seen as a simple question, but it isn't a simple question. I'm sorry. But these sort of things, like both parties on review, when you talk to it, the KPI isn't necessarily just about the person. It's actually really about how we can open doors and offer people questions and discuss what they have to say about the company, what other people in the company have to say. So you're getting a more generalised idea and view of the business. So, and the comment I make is trying to ask polite yet probing questions, and it may be a bit of an acquired skill for some. That's why I've set it up in this document that I'm happy to pass on. And the reason why I generally pass things on like this in Word, copyright free for you to use and share, is because I think it adds value to the whole community, and that's really what it's about. And Aussies and Kiwis are really good at that generally. Like they don't mind taking the mickey out of each other, but they also have this team spirit. And as you said earlier, just before the session, Steve, that's the great thing. The wonderful thing about, if there is a wonderful thing about COVID, is that we've actually seen how people can join together and prosper under the one umbrella, or under, should I say, under the one face mask. Oh, that'd be ugly, wouldn't it? So, okay, next slide. Feedback. Yep, that's what it's about. You know, everybody's different, and we've really got to respect that. You know, we open the door and allow feedback, it'll happen. If we don't, trust me, the first feedback you'll get is that knock on the door that I spoke about. Knock, knock, knock. Hey, John, I'd like to give a week's notice, and that in itself has got a big cost to the company. Next slide. I don't mean to suggest here you've got to write a novel. What I'm after is a piece of paper, and just like my to-do list here, where can I show it there? Start with a list. I'm not after verses and paragraphs and pages. I'm just saying have an agenda. We'd like to talk about this. And it could be, like you were suggesting, Steve, an issue about a job. And in that case, I'd get the 2 or 3 people that were involved in that job, or the one person that was involved in the job, and deal with that as a specific element of an agenda. The benefit of an agenda, it can always give you an out. And even if that out is the end of agenda and say, okay, guys, the meeting's finished. Is there anything else you want to discuss? If you don't have an agenda, no one's got the opportunity to prepare. So I'm really an advocate to have a bullet point list. In fact, for Melissa, I do have an article that I've written on to-do lists about how valuable they can do and who used them and where the history of them, where they come from. But I just feel to have something in the form of writing, because I'm a real believer in the verbal agreement is not worth the paper it's written on. Next slide, please. Keep the meeting focused on track. This is a great saying, especially since we just wandered off the track, and I've got a real bad habit of it. So let's make sure that we keep the conversation related to what we're talking about. When you're having a meeting with especially staff, don't start with nitpicking. Aim to raise the spirit of the environment. Positives are far better for everybody than negatives. And meaningful praise. Thank you is probably the most powerful 2 letters there is in our vocabulary. So please use them often and meaningful. Next one. Hey, Conan, thanks for doing a great job at this in the background. We're going well, I hope. Make sure the feedback is positive. It's always best to start and finish with a positive. There's a formula. They say there should be 5 pieces of positive for every 1 negative. I got that from my quest to read up on this, and it sort of makes sense to me. It's a good little number to keep in the back of your head. So in your agenda, if you're preparing for something, don't have a slab of 5 problems and then 1 good one and expect to get a great meeting out of it. You're going to deflate the morale value of everybody as they walk back into the workshop. So, and of course, finish on a simple positive note and thank them. Because it makes people feel good. It's as simple as that. We're not talking, you don't have to be a psychologist to understand that a pat on the back is a very powerful tool if it's done in a meaningful way. Thank you. The list of action items, very similar to the to-do list that I work with daily. Being a signee, I tend to do little letters along mine and have a bit of fun with it, and it's a real accomplishment at the end of the day if you've got action lists. The singular biggest complaint that I get when I often chair meetings for people or sit in and observe, I actually prefer to go to a meeting and sit in and observe and say zip, and then make a comment to the directors and the staff separately, and then go to the next meeting and see if we can work out what the difference is. But the typical feedback, the most common feedback is all we do is talk. We never recap on the meeting, and more to the point, nothing ever happens. The simple cure of that is make sure that we take notes, and I'm not talking about type notes, I'm talking about have a meeting agenda with a few written action items, spend 5 minutes, do some brainstorming, and don't make the top 5 25. You know, so these are the items that we are going to act on. They're the agenda items that come up at the next meeting. This is what we've done. And there's nothing wrong with saying we haven't had time to work on that because we've been working on this one. It took a lot more time that was allowed in the normal day. You know, we've uncovered a few things that we can make some differences on, and that item number 4, we're going to have to defer for a couple of weeks because we're going to get some outside help, or we're going to bring in a consultant, or I've got a colleague of mine at his business premises, Joe Bloggs up the road has come in, or, you know, maybe relied, the whole value of the NZSDA is that there are other colleagues and people who have probably already been through the same experience that someone else is going through. So you can make a few phone calls and share results from another well-respected sign company and say, we had a problem like this at our premises because of ABC, and get them to do a Zoom meeting with you and tackle the same problem in a different manner. So you must have an action list to work with. Thank you. What's important, you know, about it, make a list, keep them motivated, making sure they're working to an appropriate standard, who will be promoted, is there an increase in the pay, what are the options. Some people pay, like we're seeing a whole new advent in Australia and around the world with we've got a JobKeeper thing where the government's paying a certain amount of money on a fortnightly basis. And the feedback I'm getting from employers and employees alike is that they're the people that really love their jobs, and they're obviously able to be rewarded, but they'll come in, they might be being paid for 3 days a week, but they're coming in 5 because that's what they choose to do. That's a fairly rare individual, and that's up to everybody to choose what they're going to do. But their standard is different than someone else's standard. And I know I've said it a million times, and that's the simple word respect. So they're the sort of things that this will uncover by actually having information about the people. Can you provide them with a new and challenging responsibility? Sure, for the people who are prepared to take it. Definitely no for those who don't want additional responsibilities, because you may not know what's happening in their outside life. But you should, in all honesty, be able to freely talk about action plans for poor performance. It's really important that it's not the big taboo subject, you know, because not everybody is going to perform at the same rate. Everybody has different standards. Thanks, Conan. The word agreement, to me, it always assumes that people are going to all say yes. There's nothing wrong with people saying no when some people are saying yes, and even some people saying maybe. So it's imperative to understand that you need some form of commitment, and that commitment could be, no, I don't agree with that. So then you've got this subject to talk about, but it keeps the freedom of discussion. So, but I do believe that if you create this environment where the action plan has a time frame, like, you know, I mentioned 12 weeks on the slide, but it doesn't matter what time frame it is. It could be, okay, we'll do that. You know what? It's that important. We're going to stop the meeting and we're going to work on it this afternoon. Whereas other ones might say, well, we don't have the funding because of COVID to tackle this for the next 12 months. I'm just talking about have the respect to the people that are there to talk about a logical closing date. Every project has a start, it has a process and a finish. But inside that process, there might be a number of areas where there might be deferments because of certain areas. That's what communication helps with. It helps keep people having faith with your process and them knowing that you have trust in them as people in your organisation. Schedule catch-ups. And again, and I guess there's a common term for it. I've heard it pretty well in many countries of the world, and that's a toolbox meeting. Sometime a review could be, how's it going? I remember we spoke at the meeting about such and such. I just want to keep you informed that this is what we're doing. And that's obviously relevant. In smaller shops, it's much easier to do because it could be a catch-up during the process of work, and that's fine. But in the larger shops, you have to make sure that the people involved in the discussions about a particular, and it's not always an issue, but a particular subject, are freely engaged to be able to work to understand that issue is going to be dealt with one way or the other. And if it's going to be a catch-up, it's 30 minutes tops, 20 if you can do it, and sometimes 10 is more appropriate. Thank you. Employee retention. A few words of gratitude I've already covered. Show that you care. If you don't care, you probably listen to the wrong guy if you don't care, because like I said in one of the slides earlier, anybody can go out and lease equipment and rent a factory, but unless you've got good quality people and intelligent people who enjoy coming to work, you'll always be battling against the odds. So when we talk about creative ways to show appreciation, it could be a matter of getting them out and going down the bowling alley, or taking them out on a fishing trip, or, and I mean this with every bit of sincerity, take the ladies out to somewhere that they would like. Don't take them and play golf. Don't take me to play golf. I've never been a golfer. I'm not a real fan of chasing a white ball around it. Whereas it could be 5 minutes in a coffee shop. What I'm talking about is showing the fact that you're hopefully aiming to be in tune by it. And don't be afraid to say that, oh, oops, I've mucked this up. I was wrong. That's what I thought you would have enjoyed. And they'll soon tell you. So that's why something like a quick luncheon, an afternoon, having a cup of coffee or a Bunnings, or what I like and what we used to do at my company Hadfield, so we used to have well days, because there was always those people who would have their 10 sick days intact at the end of it, because some awards in Australia, the sick days are accumulative. Whereas I would often say to them, why don't you take a well day and let them have some time where they didn't have that guilt of the feeling of having a sickie off. I hope someone doesn't see me walking down the main street of Christchurch, that I'm actually out there just enjoying myself because I've actually got a day off. And the reference I made before, the program that we used to run weekly, that accumulated every month, there was a prize of $60 for, keeping in mind this is going back 25 years or more. It was a night out at a cheap beach. It was a voucher. The next step up with that was every 3 months. It was a larger voucher. And then once a year, we used to give the recognised employee as voted by the staff a trip overseas to a sign show. Obviously, that's tax deductible. The winner of our first one actually went to the joint Aussie-New Zealand conference in Fiji, but we had them go to Manchester or to Las Vegas to conferences all over the place. And as I said, the real value in that Employee of the Month program for us, and I still have that documentation if anybody's interested in it, I'd have to dig it up, but it was a really simple rating chart with an A4 sheet. You just fill in 1 to 5 for each of the people. And it was on things that really bug people, like tidiness, their attitude to work. Did they finish jobs in a timely manner? It wasn't about, all of those culminate in the fact that they either do their job well and potentially make a profit, or they do the job poorly and the opposite happens. And that's why I've got this different view about KPIs related to creative industries and creative professionals like are in our industry. So we can talk about that at another time, or I could forward that to Melissa and she could pass it on. Next one. The big nasty one that nobody ever wants to talk about, and I'll put to you this, it costs at least 3 months salary to hire and train a new staff member. I'm actually doing a recruitment program. I mentioned it before with a company at the moment. And just to put, and this is one of those areas where if you're in, let's pick a town, say Nelson, right? Beautiful place in New Zealand, but it's got a really great family of sign writers there, of course, and a couple of them. But if you were looking for another staff member in that area, it would be great to pull someone from, say, Auckland, where the pool is much deeper, or even up from Christchurch, where there's a lot more people. How do you get those people? So the work that I've done with this company in Bathurst, which is a small, successful regional town, is talking about building the portfolio that you can put to perspectives. And in this case, it's tree change because it's country New South Wales. But there's about 3 or 4 days work of put that together. Most companies won't look at that in a rational format, and therefore they won't attract city people. The sell is really the fact that like $1 million in Sydney now will buy you a shanty, whereas $500,000 in Bathurst will buy you a 5-bedroom home on acreage. So the reality is a part of the push is education. The facilities that are there, and in the case of Nelson, the great views and seaside location, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just, people don't come to work to live. They actually come to work to provide something so they can live the way they want it. What I'm saying is that crossover in between the two is if you've got a nice balance, you can manage performance because they may not be happy outside of work, which is affecting their work. So unless you really take into account, the obvious thing is that, sure, there's a problem in the production area, and that's this KPI thing. Oh, well, you mucked up that job, so I'm not going to give you this. Whereas if we reverse it around and actually find out where the real snags are in why someone's in an environment that they're in, it's a whole different way of looking at things. And as I said at the start, it's about the people that are there and the boss. And I'm sorry, guys, if it's a mainly male audience, I'm going to insult pretty well everybody that's listening to me, but females in general, my wife, I've been very fortunate, married to her for 48 years, she sees things absolutely different to me. That's a fantastic strength if you're intelligent enough to use it. Women have a natural ability that they're born with as a part of who they are, their makeup, they see things differently to us. If you're not leveraging that and working with it, and I don't mean disrespectfully, but women are a lot more in tune to emotion, thus the male suicides. There's so many because blokes don't talk to each other. Blokes don't talk about poor performance, whereas women, they've got a great ability to talk about their problems. So there's a whole lot of things. The biggest problem in managing underperformance is it impacts on everybody in the whole building, not just the individual that's doing what you think is the poor performance. Tough subject, really tough subject. And I'm not trying to put forward I'm a psychologist. I'm just talking about the facts that over the years with 30 staff like we had for 25, 30 years, if you're not learning, you're going backwards, you're not making a profit. And profit is generated by the people that work there. That's why when I sold my company, a big chunk of the money that I earned went to them, because without them, we would not be where we were. A different philosophy. I have a lot of negative feedback about it, but I don't care. You know, that's the way I run things. I'm not telling you to run it my way. I'm saying to you, there are different ways in the way you're doing it if you're doing it tough with people. Next slide. Sorry to get a bit wound up with that one, but this poor performance thing, you should be able to talk about it really simple. If the situation doesn't improve, sure, there are all these legal restraints about giving people a written letter and outlining your concerns and providing an opportunity to respond. But the bottom line on this slide is act in line with the local guidelines and regulations. Otherwise, it's just nasty for everybody. Next one. Okay, and like we should be doing in every case is we should be having fun because we're all humans. The employers and the bosses and everybody there, even the contractors and the people that we work with, the way we greet our suppliers when they walk in. You know, Steve walks in the door, he wouldn't probably visit too many people, but Noel would be on his back to make sure he's out there interfacing with people. But it's the spirit of the company. You deal with these people because of the relationship value. You know, I don't think we really make signs. Like if you ask me what our main business is, I don't believe the majority of people who have long-term good quality contracts making signs do with that company because they're fantastic sign writers. And proportionally, and you know, I get slaughtered by my Aussie mates, but New Zealand, without question in my book, has a greater proportion of higher quality sign companies than any other country that I've visited. Traveling internationally for a number of years, I think I've got the backup to be able to understand it. It's a close-knit community that care about quality and work. But the leverage, I'm saying, we've really got to understand that people are the value. So if we're going to make a place more fulfilling, if it's a happy workplace, and we love coming to work, like I said about Confucius, if you love what you do, like I could have retired at 51 when I sold up, but as a young paper boy and the youngest of 8, I love to work. That's all I've really ever known, and I love it. So why would I stop? Sure, I have days off here and I go skiing in New Zealand and overseas and do the things that I want to do with my family because that's where my value set is. But don't expect that your employers have got the same value set as you. So you are also human, and it's about time you started treating yourself properly, and it's because it's vital to the way the performance. Both Steve and Andy and Melissa were talking about before we came on about the reality of us coming to work is that it's a supposedly a necessary evil. If you looked at, and I'm assuming it's probably not happened as much in New Zealand because you guys are world leaders in this COVID problem, but our suicide numbers have just jumped through the roof. And it's of the same proportional numbers, mainly male, because we've only just seen the tip of the iceberg about how many redundancies and wholesale sackings there are going to be. Problems like big city high-rise, if you're on the 8th floor of a building and you employ 200 people and you've only get 2 people in a lift at a time, that's 3 hours to get to work from the ground floor to the 8th floor. And in Australia, you're not allowed to use fire escapes as passageways. So we're only just starting to see the issues that are related to it. We, fortunately, in our chosen field of work, have a simpler area, but the human and emotional side is going to be the same. So I'm all about, you get good performance if the people feel that they're a part of a team, if their individual personal needs are fulfilled, and you'll usually find even the old grumpy ones, and look at me, you know, I'm in the old grumpy men syndrome age group. You don't have to be like that if you choose, or you're in an environment that stimulates you and that you enjoy doing what you're doing. Next slide. So these are the 3 articles that I've based this presentation on. The right employee is a huge asset, and for everybody, I'd be the first to say they're also your greatest liability. And if you don't foster that liability, it's going to become bigger. If you foster it, it could end up as a huge asset. Staff performance and rewarding is probably the main part of this thrust that I had a look at. And then if you think good employees are expensive, take a look at your bad ones. That's very much the case of this Michael Gerber book, The E-Myth. If you're going to buy it, I've had a standard offer for years, and I'll stick my neck out again. Buy the simple version. It's from the mid-80s. It's about 30 bucks. You buy it and do something that you never do. Grab yourself a fluoro marker and highlight the text in the book with your little fluoro pen, which I've never ever advocated for that, but it changed my life one day when I read someone's copy. I'd already read it and I said, I haven't seen that book for a while. I grabbed it and I looked through it, and the person had actually gone through and fluoro marked the book. My eyes nearly fell out. I felt, that's sacrilege, man. But then I saw other colours in it. I said, what's this? And he said, I gave it to my partner and she read it. What an insight that is, to be able to actually listen to someone without them talking to you. So for anybody who wants to go out and buy that book, you read the book, post it to me. I'll put 30 bucks, what you paid for it, back in it, and I'll post it back to you. $30 in, I'll have to make it Aussie dollars or US currency or whatever, or I'll buy you dinner if you're in Sydney. The feedback, I've only paid out a few times because most of the time people send me a book or a note and say, that really changed the way I view things. But it's on the basis that if you've taken what you love to do and turned it into a full-time vocation, and then all of a sudden you're employing people to do what you love to do and you're not doing what you love to do anymore, there's a gap in your education. And I'm saying you've got to look backwards at who your people are and how you're managing them and how much help they can give you, because they're probably in the same boat. So the next slide. So these are available through Melissa for members and non-members alike. And the next slide is, I believe, the KPI document. Conan. And this is sort of what it looks like. I think it's about 6 or 7 pages, and you can see sort of by the questions there. And it's not how you feel, it's how they rate themselves, because you don't know how they feel in reality. So this is a key performance indicator that you can talk about openly, because some of the areas, like there's one there, number 4, about the middle of the page, planning, budgeting and forecasting. If that was an employee out on the shop floor who was basically doing sign assembly, they're not going to know much about it. They're going to see that as budgeting and forecasting. So, well, no, look at it in regard to how you feel you plan your working day, or how do you do your planning working day. And the comment might be, well, I don't plan my day. No one ever does. I just pick up what I choose. There's a gap in your process that will benefit you. So this is for you guys to have a look at, choose and make it your own. Flick my little logo off the top and make it something in your standard list of documentation used for your premises with my my gift from NZSDA. Next slide.
And John, just on that quickly, what's your take, or would you agree that it's not necessarily the employee or the leader's responsibility to make the staff member happy? So I've heard that before, that it's, it's, you need to make me happy at work, like in those terms, where, would you believe that it's around creating that, it's creating that right environment and going through these processes that you've put through today? But have you ever had that before? Anything like that being said to you?
That's a really great question, Steve. And I don't think I've ever had that posed to me, but it's a bit like the analogy of trying to put a square peg in a round hole. You can do it, but you're likely to damage either the board you're hammering the round peg into or the square peg into. So you have to draw a line, and it's a very brave step to be able to recognise and sort of take that on the chin and say, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm not getting anywhere with it. And you'd be really, really surprised when you're open and honest with people, they usually come forth. You know how I was talking about this employee reward scheme that we came up with? One of the young women, she was without a doubt the best graphic designer I had ever seen, and probably still have ever seen in the industry. Dee, her name was. She was just amazing. Very, very difficult to work with. And she was so shocked by how her peers and her colleagues read her, that she came into my office in tears, and she said, I had no idea how people felt about me. Now, I didn't see that in her. Everybody else saw the same thing. She went from the worst employee one year to the best employee the following year, and on a trip to Manchester overseas to a science show. And Manchester happened to be where there was something that she was interested in. We found a science show in the world that she could go to visit relatives, basically. So you're right, Steve. It's not everything fits, because the bad news was the following year, she wasn't at my company anymore because she just fell back into her old habits. They stopped doing, she wouldn't input her form. So that was her own personal struggle. I'm pleased to say many years later, she actually works for a colleague of mine, and she's moved to country New South Wales, and she's really got a life together. She's married with a couple of kids. So it's that point, maybe it's that point in time when you're employing someone that could have been a star for ABC company to come to work for you, and they're the nightmare from hell. And it just could be one person in the factory. It could be the bus driver. Who knows what the other thing is? You can't control everything.
Yeah.
It's a great point to bring it up, Steve. Yeah.
And we had a great question from Clinton, which is very much on that same topic, is how much emphasis is it for the employees to turn up to work self-motivated? So if you're happy, yes, you will be motivated, but is it up to the employer to motivate that person? And I think that's very much that grey area, right? That, you've just got to be in yourself, self-motivated and happy, and want to get in and do a good job and whatnot. But I think that leader plays that part too, to actually, I'll let you answer that.
Motivation is probably the difference between a match or a cigarette lighter. And I don't believe when it comes to people, you should use either. Because unless they've got the ability to be a happy person in themselves, you don't know how they were brought up. You don't know the environment that they were brought up in or how they were brought up. And that might be the leading cause of why they're not a happy person in themselves. It doesn't mean that they may function. And not only that, the whole question we haven't even addressed here, and you couldn't do it in a webinar, but any of the employment interviews that I do, and there'd be a regular occurrence with me, we do a 40 question, wow. A 40 question questionnaire based on an American university study that they did. It's a bit like Myers-Briggs, for people who know Myers-Briggs. And by the person checking a word of each of these 40 choices they've got. So they've got 4 words and 40 lots of them to do, and they choose one word out of each one, and it profiles the person into them having a personality type. It wouldn't be hard to accept once you talk to me, and we've had an interview like we've been doing now, that I'm a controller analyzer. And but we're all made up of a little bit of those 4 quadrants. So you've got controller, analyzer, persuader, and stabilizer. The reason why I get along so well with my lovely wife is that she's a persuader stabilizer, and she does have strong analytical characteristics. So out of these 4 quadrants that you're in, we're all clearly defined in those roles. So if you've got someone, and they may have, for whatever reason, they may be in the wrong job, and they'll stick in that job, even though the current trend is that you start one career and you can change many, many careers. So I completely agree. And I don't have an answer for it, obviously, because the psychologists don't have an answer for it. But I think it's worthwhile addressing, because it could be that one, rotten apple in the bunch that changes the whole outlook of your whole shop. But it could be worthwhile, like I said, with the young Dee, that young woman. She was just such an outstanding employee. That we learned to put up and tolerate really, really bad behaviour. And bad behaviour in my world is not having the decency to say, yeah, good morning, because somebody said good morning to them. I'm not expecting to say good morning first, but the leader should have that onus of responsibility, as should other people in there that have got a more caring disposition. And it's the difference between having the glass of water that's half full or half empty. Which is it?
Yeah, right. Okay.
Good question. Yeah.
Definitely. So if that's the end of our slide, I'd just like to open up to everyone that's here today, that if you have any questions or anything you want answered a little bit more. One I wanted to throw out, if it's all right, is I'm very curious on how our customers, staff and culture has changed during COVID. So when we came back after our first initial lockdown, did you find a difference in your team, positive or negative, like whatever happened along those lines? Did people come back and rally behind a cause to get back out there and get those jobs out and find that new business? Or have you had more problems? Feel free to chuck that in the comments, or we can unmute if you've got any experiences you want to talk about. But yeah, I'm just just fascinated around that side of it.
As I would be. Yeah, that's a good comment, Steve. Is that a question for me or for the audience?
That was for the audience, but I'm just willing to learn, right? So if anyone has anything that they'd like to share, feel free. Yeah. Otherwise, so we might, if that's the end of the presentation, then John.
Okay.
Yeah, if that's again, look, mate, thank you very, very much for that. It's we learned a lot. I said that I knew it would be topical. So with New Zealand going through the latest round of COVID transmission that's hit our country, it's right now it's how we're talking to our people and how you deal with it and how you act in the office and the things that you say or in the warehouse is going to make a huge difference. So I know people would have got a lot out of it today for sure. So I'm really excited for the next few coming up. But what I want to do is just kind of hand it over to Andy now, the president of the NZSDA, to help basically wrap up this session and let him have his bit. Yeah, so go for it, Andy.
If I can just jump in one, thank you for those positive comments. I wouldn't be so presumptuous to assume that everybody would have enjoyed what I've got to say, and that's their right. But I'd love to hear back through Melissa what the feedback was. If there's anything I should have dealt with more or less, I'm more than happy to hear feedback, both positive and negative. And I don't care if it's in the proportions that I offered before of 5 positives and negative. It's to me, it's about communicating the experience that I've had in employing people who are creative professionals in the industry for the years that I've been in it. Over to you, Andy. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Yeah, my name's Andy Lowe. And I'm the NZSDA current president. So first off, I'd really like to thank John and Steve and Computer Letter and Melissa for setting all of this up, because it's just invaluable tools for any business, really. John's experience in all levels is, over the years that I've been following what he's been doing as well, is pretty, as you can see today, pretty astounding. So thank you very much for that, mate. Just a quick word I wanted to mention to you. One of the things that we find as an association is when we're talking to new prospective members is why become an NZSDA member, and that's just something I wanted to touch on today quickly. And I guess I could sit here and tell you all of the reasons, based off our literature and all that kind of thing. But I thought probably what I found valuable as a sign company myself was to know why other members joined. So I thought I'd just quickly share with you why I joined and the values that I get out of being a member. Obviously, things like today is a prime one, being able to talk to industry specialists and suppliers and things like that, and people who are going through and experience the same things as what I do as a business owner. So one of the things I found is that I'd always be going through different problems and working through different things within my business. And I guess I sort of felt a little bit myself that I was alone in dealing with those things, but it's just not the case. When you become an NZSDA member and you meet with the other people who are other members, and you meet at conferences and things like that, you do tend to realize that, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not the person, not by myself. These guys are all dealing with the same issues, things like staffing and dealing with people, as John's been talking about today, legal side of things, all different aspects of it, really. And that to me was a very valuable thing, and probably another thing that I found very valuable was, and I'm sure we all go through this as sign companies, where we are competing against other companies that may not necessarily be up to decent standards in some ways, whether it be pricing or quality of work and things. So we're competing against these people on a constant sort of basis. So what I wanted was something that was going to show some kind of a stamp of recognition from the industry to say that my company was there. My company was a good company. What the work we did was good, and that we had a credibility. So that NZSDA stamp for me was very valuable in that regard as well, because it was something I could add to my business, to my marketing when I'm talking to my prospective customers, and basically adding credibility to what I was saying and what my company stood for. The NZSDA is all about promoting good values and promoting professionalism in all aspects of your business life. So that again was something that I wanted to try and push through. It was very valuable to me as a business owner to be able to talk with other businesses who have found different values from different things. So then to steer or help me steer my business in the directions that I wanted it to go with. So. Sorry, I'm a signwriter, not a speaker, so I've got to go through my notes a little bit. We also offer, in a way, a type of safeguard for signage customers too, so that they know that when they're dealing with an NZSDA member, they're dealing with people who know what they're doing. All of our members are vetted before they become members, so we know that they're dealing with a quality, or they know they're dealing with a quality sign shop. They also have the backup of the NZSDA to be able to talk to us if there ever is an issue. We can, basically draw from all of our members different information that may be of value to a customer as well if they do have a problem, things like that. So that's also something that's very valuable. We're also one of the main things that I personally and my predecessor Paul Walters and the rest of the guys on the board for that matter have all become very passionate about is training for our industry. We all basically have the same problems in trying to get good quality tradesmen. So obviously the apprenticeship thing is something that has been highlighted a lot lately with the changes that have been happening in New Zealand. We have also, as an association, started our program called Signy, which has been a fantastic thing to work with and to learn about in regards to letting people know, or letting younger people know who are just going through that decision in life as to where they want to be, that signwriting and signage is a major trade. It's amazing when I can speak from experience, when you stand up in a classroom and you ask students what a signwriter does, and their immediate reaction is, oh, you stick sticky letters on things, stuff like that. So they really don't have any idea as to what we do as a trade. So what we're working on in the future, as well as our Signy program, which is a basic training, pre-vocational training for kids coming out of school, so they've got some kind of an experience on our trade and know a little bit about it before they're actually stuck in the deep end. It also lets the kids realise that it's not just something as simple as whacking some vinyl lettering on. It can, with the diversity of our industry, which is massive now, from being able to hand mark out a letter through to building a billboard or designing someone's logo or wrapping a vehicle or whatever the case may be, very, very intricate and diverse skill level. So Signy is become something, as you can tell, that I'm pretty passionate about, and it is basically underway at the moment and being launched. So it's something that we really love our members to get behind, and thanks to all of the suppliers as well who have helped us out with that. So benefits and discounts. The NZSDA offers its members discounts and benefits for business suppliers such as Access, Man, High Ridge and courses, Red Cross courses and free apps. site safe discount courses, health and safety packages. We can also supply things like employment contracts, which we have updated by the powers that be, basically, once or twice every couple of years, so we know that it's all up to date and current. Benefits with companies such as Office Max, Contact Energy, and fuel cards and insurance and things. So we're constantly working on that, and basically would like feedback from members and potential members as to what they would also like to see as benefits for their membership too. Obviously, there's the events that we hold. We have our conference every 2 years. Our industry expo every 2 years, and our conference every year, which also coincides with the NZSDA awards. There's something like, on average around 400 awards entered every year, which is something that is, as a sign writer, I guess, if I look at it personally, I've never been a sports person, so for me to win something award-wise was a major advantage and a major great feeling for me, I suppose. So it's something that I would really recommend and encourage people to do, would be to, if you've got something there that you really think special, put it in the awards, enter it in there. It's a great feeling to be able to get some kind of feedback from other people in your industry as to the standard of your work. So it's well and truly something I think worthwhile looking at. Thanks to Melissa. Basically, every week we're having social media postings and things like that with different information. Melissa's just doing a great job keeping our members aware of different changes and legalities wise, events wise, things like that through both our Facebook and website pages. And one of the new things that well, it's not new, but it's something that hasn't been done for a while, is we're also looking at getting out there and actually, being face to face with our members now and getting some information and feedback from them as to what we can do better to help you guys as well, and also get a bit more of a feel for the people in our industry and where they feel the future of our industry is going. And all of us have different businesses and different ways of doing things, so we're finding that feedback has become basically invaluable. So basically, if anyone's got any questions or anything about membership or advantages, disadvantages, costs, things like that, the Master Signmaker program, Signy, anything like that, either Melissa or myself are available to answer any of those questions. And yeah, we'd really love to see you come aboard. And again, that's about it for me. So thanks very much again, Steve, and I'll pass it back.
Mate. Yeah, no, that was well said, definitely. Look, we've been part of the NZSDA for, yeah, God knows how long, day dot type thing, right? And it's something we're extremely proud of. And I love seeing those comments that are popping up now with, we do put that logo up with pride. So look, if anyone that's here today that isn't part of it and just wants to chat or learn a bit more, you can get in touch with myself or the team at Computer Letter. But it's a community, it really is. And it's we lean on it as a supplier. We definitely reach out and talk to the members and customers that are involved to get advice, and like you said, where the industry is shifting and moving. But it's a community that definitely is all about that craft that is still well and truly there, and it's something that we're very, very proud of. So no, well done, mate. Well done, Melissa. It's yeah, great work, and thanks again, John, for your time today. And look, like I said, the next one's coming up. This is all around opportunities, technologies that are coming our way. So John's going to take us through that on the 3rd of September. So I hope to see everyone back there again. We'll make sure there's plenty of notice and you'll have lots of time to get involved in that. And then the 3rd will be mid-September, I think is the plan, 17th, and that's around value. So again, much more information to come. But thanks, team. Thanks for everyone for joining. Stay safe out there, and let's pray for some good news come Friday, right? Just a couple of days. We should be good. So, all right.
Bye all.
Thanks, team. See ya.
Bye.